So in this video, we're going to quickly go over how we can get our health bars on the top of our screen to start interacting with our characters on screen by looking at their health stat. All right, so to start it off, we're going to really re-engineer our stat script right here. So let me bring over stats. All right, we're going to add a few things. Let's start with variables first. So we just had a regular public float. Let's add another float, and let's call this starting health. That'll be important to set the max value of our, and I'm going to go ahead and actually cut and paste this to be on top here. So our starting health variable is above our regular health variable. That's going to help us determine the max value for our UI slider that we just made. And we're going to make a bool called display UI. This will help determine which enemy is actually putting out information to our enemy UI that we have in the top right. And then we're going to make a public slider variable called health slider. And I already have it included, but I'm going to delete it so you guys can see me typing in. At the very beginning, we need to do using Unity engine.ui because our slider typecast is going to look for this library to be included with what we got going on. And then we're going to make a public game object called health UI. This will help us get at our respective sliders during the update of our stat script here. All right, first we're going to make a void awake function, and it's going to be a really one line, really simple. We're going to say that health is equal to starting health. And I think I forgot to put that capital. I'm going to go up here and do the cardinal case the way we should be doing it. All right, now the meat and potatoes of our script. Void update. Oh, messed that up. Let's make a correct parentheses there. So we need to do two things during our update. We need to update our player UI, and we need to update our enemy UI. So we're going to say if GameObject.tag equals player, meaning if this stat script is attached to a player object, which if it's attached to my Gambit character, then we're going to start setting up and assigning values to these health variables I had up here. We're going to say that health UI equals GameObject dot find GameObjects with tag. And I haven't made the tag yet, but we're going to say player health UI. Hit Control S. So I'm going to go back up to my player in my HUD canvas. I'm going to select my player game object, and I'm going to go and add a tag. And you can see I've already added these, but I'll delete them for right now. And we can remake them. So I'm going to say player health UI, and I'm going to make one for enemy health UI real quick. All right, so I got those tags set up, and I'm going to go and assign my tags to my player health game object, make it have the player health UI tag, and enemy health UI will have the enemy health UI. So now we can assign our health UI game object right here to the correct player health game object that we set up here in our canvas. Now we need to actually get at our slider. So we're going to say health slider because this is what controls our green bar from shrinking and growing if we get health pickups or if we take damage. We're going to say health UI dot game object dot transform dot get child 0 dot get component not component, and then we're going to get to that slider. So what just happened? Did I spell that right? I want to redo this to make sure that I can get component. There we go. Slider. So what is with this child thing right here? Well, previously when we did the transform.getParent, it allowed us to, if we were on our player health thing in our player health object in our hierarchy, we could automatically find what parent we're attached to. But since we already found our player health, if I expand it, player health slider is the first child of my player health parent object. So this bit of code says get child in the 0 position, 0 being the first thing in my nested list right here, my hierarchy. So if my health slider was below my portrait, I would change that to get child 1 because 0, 1 in my list here. But with the way we got it set up, our portrait is second because we want it to draw on top of our slider graphic right there. All right. So, my cat's want to. All right, so let's go back to our code here. So now that we have our health UI game object set and our health slider variable set to our correct slider component right here, we can now access our value and our max value, which is what we want to do right now. So we want to say, okay, get slider. So what we want to say is if health slider dot max value equals 0, meaning if there's really not an enemy filling up the max value in my UI element up there, we're just going to say health slider dot max value equals starting health, and that right there will tell us exactly how big our slider is going to be up here in our right. Remember max value, if we set it to 100, then we can slide all the way up to 100. But right now we're going to leave our sliders at 0. So if your sliders over here in your hierarchy have a max value, go ahead and set both to 0. I'm going to uncheck whole numbers since we're using floats. All right. So let's bring back up my code. So if my max value is 0, then we're going to go ahead and fill it up with my starting health value. Then after that, we're going to adjust. This is where the magic comes. Basically, we're saying that my slider value right here is going to be equal to the current health of whatever game object we have with the correct tag. And then we're just going to copy and paste this. And instead of player, we're just going to say enemy. All right. But we're going to have a problem coming up in that there's going to be multiple enemies on screen. That's where this display UI is going to come in handy. So why don't we go ahead and add a qualifier. Also, if display UI equals true, because we only want one enemy at a time to have their UI displayed at the top of our screen right here. All right. So that's the only difference between these two if statements right here. And then we're going to come right underneath our conditional statement for our enemy and do an else if game object dot tag equals. And in this one, we're just going to see if we're enemy, and we're going to leave it at that. And then we're going to reset the health UI game object to null. Basically, we're resetting our variables that hold our slider and our health UI panel graphic right there. All right. Also, we want to do one more thing. We're going to say if health is less than or equal to 0, then we're going to destroy game object. And that'll effectively get our defeated enemy or defeated player off the screen. And we're just going to have them disappear for right now. All right. So that's our stat script. All right. We got to do one more thing to make sure that we're working good with our enemies. We're going to hop over to our enemy state script right here. And I have the new bits of code commented out. Make sure that you're, do we even need the enemy UI? I don't even think we need UI. Basically, all we're going to do in our enemy state, let me get rid of that. All we're going to do in our enemy states is access our stats to toggle our display UI boolean on and off. So go ahead and declare a stats variable up here of type stats. And then it's pretty easy from here. First, we're going to initialize it in our await. So stats equals get component stats. Same thing that we did in the rest of these guys right here. We're just getting at our, on my Sentinel character. Let me go ahead and drop a Sentinel into the scene here. We're just getting at our stat script right here. And then let me go ahead and for every single one of these conditional logic statements we have set up that drive the behavior of our Sentinel, we're going to say if we're getting knocked down, then stats.display equals true. If we're taking damage, then stats.display equals true. And then all the rest of them where we're not taking damage, we're going to say that stats.display UI equals false. So when we're in a idle state or a walking state or just anything where we're not taking damage, oh, I deleted the wrong thing there. Anytime we're not taking damage, we're going to set that display to false. So it's not getting in the way of, if our current enemy is not currently taking damage, we don't really want it to have priority to draw and update up here. When we only want the enemies that are taking damage to have their UI display going on or have their UI values updated. So I'm going to go ahead and put all these in. So remember, display equals false if it's a idle, walk, or attack state, and display UI is true if we're attacking. I'm going to hit Control S, and why don't we test out what we got? All right, we got a little syntax error, so let's see what's going on here. Forgot to do equals equals in this conditional statement. All right, moment of truth. So I'm going to hit play. And right off the bat, we have an error saying object reference is not set to an instance of this object. What does that mean? Well, it looks like when we're trying to assign these variables right here, it can't find our health UI. I wonder why that is. What's going on here? Well, if I look at my Sentinel, I don't have a starting health set for my Sentinel because that's a new variable. So we'll say 50. And we'll go ahead and make their current health 0. So if we press play, there we go. All right, my current health is 50. And it looks like we're having trouble somewhere else. I think that's because I got to do the same thing to my Gambit. Like so. So whenever I found what was going on here, whenever I was just talking about the get child thing, if that wasn't, get child wasn't correctly set to the first thing, the first child in my parent list up here, it was trying to access, actually in my HUD canvas, when I was in player health, it was trying to access slider off of portrait because I had it looking at child 1 instead of child 0. So that's what was throwing it off, I believe. So let's hit Control S and save, hit play, and there we go. You'll notice that my enemy health is red because I haven't attacked yet. All right. Let's see what's going on. Is my Sentinel... Why is my health not being updated up here? Let's find out together. All right, so I'm going to check the syntax of this. All right, if the player tag is player, then we're going to find the player tag, finding child 0, set that. Okay, that looked good. All right, for enemies, health UI, player health. Since we copy and pasted this, we forgot to update, or I forgot to update, to find objects with tag enemy health UI for the enemy portion of our stats here. So that was getting in the way of correctly populating my health bars up there. So now I can take damage or give damage and take damage. But it looks like my health is like way too high. So I'm going to set it back down to 100. And the amount of damage our enemies are putting out is based on their attack strength for each collision box attached to our attacks. So attack strength of 5, attack box 3 has an attack strength of 10. And that's how we'll do. That's how we do that. And here's an example of having multiple enemies in your scene, and how this allows you to switch between their health bars. So here we have this first Sentinel. I'm doing damage to him. Then we'll go and attack this second one and see how this health bars switch between the two. That one's dead, and then we'll switch over to that enemy's health bar. All because we had a nice little system in our stat script right here. Let me expand it. Of this display UI checkbox being checked on and off, depending on what animation state we were in our enemy state script up here. All right, so that's going to do it for updating our health bar UI. In the next video, we'll just continue on with completing this game.